Man, I'm excited to have a conversation with I would say a good friend of mine. A good friend of mine. I'm really curious to hear and to learn more about who he is, what he does, and why he does what he do. We have Curtis Clemons here to join us. And Curtis is a former Gwinnett County Police Chief. He's former sheriff and former military. And there are so many things that Curtis has his hands in. But one thing I do know him as, I do know him to be really, really focused and driven when it comes down to the community. And I can't wait to hear more about that. Hey, Curtis, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good, I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, real quick, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Oh boy, that's a long story, but I'll be brief about it.
Okay.
Who I am is I'm a father. I have two adult children. My son, I'll be remiss if I don't, give them a shout out. Drexton Clemons, my son, he's in New York. He's a professional comedian. And I have a
Wonderful.
daughter, Sierra, and she is a successful business owner in the Dunwoody area.
Okay.
So first and foremost, I'm a father, and my kids and children as a whole are very important to me. That would probably explain why, for almost 20 years, I've been a mentor with youth in Gwinnett County, and was part of the Leads program, which is I was actually the vice president of the Leads program, which is law enforcement agencies assisting in the development of students. Um, Next, I would say I'm dedicated to the community, and mentoring was part of that. I've done a lot of things in the community. Came right out of the military. I was a Marine because you're never a former Marine; you're always a Marine. And
I apologize
came out the
about that.
Marine.
And thank you
Yeah,
for your
that's
service. I'm sorry.
not a problem. Appreciate it. Came out the Marine Corps and came to Gwinnett County Sheriff's Department. Worked there for many years. And one of the reasons people don't realize I left the Sheriff's Department is actually two reasons. One, because the sheriff at that time was not interested in community service, especially in minority communities within Gwinnett County. And I wanted to do more. And so that was one reason I left. And the second reason I left is because there was a lawsuit in Gwinnett County at the time, and the sheriff was trying to avoid the lawsuit because there were no minorities in any supervisory positions.
Mm.
And so he decided, I guess based on my work history, that he was going to quickly promote me to sergeant and make me essentially the token sergeant in order to get himself out of the lawsuit. And I refused to be the token anything for the sheriff's department or for anyone. And I left and made that transition over to Gwinnett County Police Department.
Interesting. So it sounds like that you really have your hands full. Law enforcement is your jam, as my wife likes to say. So I always, when I'm talking to gentlemen and ladies who are in the military or former law enforcement or currently in law enforcement, what happened in your life to make you say, "Hey, I'm going to go this route," if you don't mind sharing?
Absolutely. Well, for me, I grew up in the military. My father was in the Air Force for 33
Mm,
years,
okay.
three-time Vietnam veteran. And so, kind of growing up with a military background, then I went in the Marine Corps myself. And my military, my MOS was law enforcement, police officer in the Marine Corps. But here's what got it all started for me. Now my dad, I know he'd probably be listening somewhere. But him being in the Air Force. Now you got to remember, I was a young kid, and I thought the Air Force was the next closest thing to being a mailman. They got a nice uniform, but they don't really do anything. They're not
Yeah.
tough, you know.
You're going to make a lot of people angry, Kurt.
Right, right. But so I knew I wanted to go in the military, but I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And long story short, for those here in the Atlanta area, and particularly in DeKalb County, where I graduated from high school,
Okay.
I left the recruiting station, which was behind South DeKalb Mall, and I stopped by the convenience store across from the mall. And as I was walking into the convenience store, I saw a guy running towards me with like a little brown paper bag in his hand. And I didn't realize it at the time, but he had a gun in the other hand. But then the clerk was chasing right behind him. And as I'm opening the door, the clerk said, "Stop him, stop him, stop him. He just robbed me." And I don't know what I was thinking, but I just stuck my foot out. The guy tripped over my foot. Money goes flying everywhere. The gun goes flying away from him. And I just jump on top of him. And then the clerk jumps on top of me. And the next thing I know, I've got 60 Cobb County police officers with guns pointing at us because they didn't know who was who to figure out who was the bad guy here. And so finally, they got us separated. And that was the first time I was ever handcuffed in my life. And then the clerk said, this guy here, he's the hero. He helped save us. And he stopped the guy from robbing me. And so they picked me up, uncuffed me, dusted me off, and the cab officer said, "Great job, but if you want to do this, why don't you go and get some training and come back and see us and join the police academy?" And so I knew at that point, this is what I wanted to do for my MOS in the military. So I went back to the recruiter and said, "I want to sign up and want to be military police, be an MP."
So talk about being in the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. That one trip, it changed the trajectory of your life. It was almost like you was destined to step. It's almost like, let me take it a little further. It's almost like that clerk was destined to be robbed so you can be there to stop them, to fulfill your purpose. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. Nothing happens by chance.
Yeah, because I don't know if I would have done that. I may have would have ran the other way. That's not my MO. I'm not sticking my foot out there and doing all that other stuff, being a hero. But
you got to keep in mind, though, growing up in the military, I grew up, with that you take charge of a situation kind of mentality, and then I was a football player, I've always been a big guy, so it's like, you take charge, you handle it, you make things happen. And that's what I did, but by the grace of God, I survived that.
Okay. So talk about your career with the police department. I did say you're a former chief of police. You don't just go through training and then all of a sudden you become chief of police. Like how did that work?
Well, in leaving a potential sergeant position, with the sheriff's department and going over to the police department, I had to go through the Gwinnett County Police Academy, start all over again, if you will.
Wow.
And become a police officer one, all the way down at the bottom. I got to tell you, my wife at the time was not happy because there was a significant loss of income there.
I would imagine.
And then, but yeah, I went through the academy, came up, and I just worked really hard. And I think my biggest connection was, I was one of the few minority officers at the time out there on the road, if you will, engaging with the community. And I became an investigator, worked 15 years, almost 16 years as an investigator, being promoted throughout that process, became an investigator, then supervising investigator. But I predominantly work homicide crimes, special victims unit, which is crimes against children, women, and crimes against the elderly. As a result of being involved with those cases, I have a lot of high profile cases that have been on TV, and so I've been interviewed by the media. Became, I don't want to say a celebrity or anything, but they brought a lot of attention to Gwinnett County because they were very, nationwide, well-known cases, and I was able to help successfully prosecute those cases. And again, working through the community, and I don't want to say it's being in the right place at the right time because I did earn it. A lot of people think, you get to that type of rank is just given to you. It wasn't given to me because there's many stories that I could tell, about the growth of Gwinnett County, both at the sheriff's department and the police department, in dealing with minority officers that, today, you think people, they file a lawsuit in a minute, but it was just a part of everyday things that we had to deal with, paving the way for you, if you will, for the officers that are out there today. And again, very much involved with in investigations and got promoted. Became the first minority precinct commander at the precinct that covers the entire Mall of Georgia area. So I work real
Is
hard to
that
gain the
like
trust.
is that like a store manager or a general manager? Is that what is
The
a
precinct
priest?
commander, yeah,
Yeah,
that
is
that
that
is a
person is
major
over?
over the precinct that covers that entire district. So you're talking about Beaufort, Sugar Hill, parts of Swanee, Rest Haven, parts of Lawrenceville, a little bit of Auburn. Some of everything is covered by that district, and so very large district to cover. And there had never been a minority precinct commander for such a huge area, and I was the first person to take over that. And I helped implement what I like to call community outreach. Again, that was the heart of why I left and went to the police department. And I had my officers, I told them, I said, we're going to do things different under my command. And officers were used to just driving through a neighborhood. Sometimes you just see a police car just drive through the neighborhood slowly, and then they drive back out, but they don't have any contact with the people. And so I started a program where I told my officers, I said, you're going to get out of your car when you see people out. Get out the car and go talk to them. And I said, if you see Mr. Johnson over there cutting the grass, he won't be upset if you go and stop him from cutting his grass and go talk to him. And I said, because Mr. Johnson is that guy that's been living in that neighborhood for 30 years. He knows all the kids. He knows everybody that lives. He knows everything that's going on in that neighborhood. And if you talk to him, he'll be a valuable wealth of information. And so they started doing that. And believe it or not, I got pushback from some of the officers because we don't have time for this. We don't have time for this. Like, trust me, it's going to pay off, in the end. And what happened, they actually started doing that. And the way I ensured that they were going to do that is that they had to go out on the radio and announce where they were. And then they had to enter in their laptop computers in the car who they spoke to.
Wow.
And then I would be able to pull that information up and go back a day or two later and actually go verify and go talk to those people. Yeah, Officer Johnson did come out here. He did speak to me. Great guy. And what happened is my officers started to develop relationships with the people in the community, including the store owners and the managers of the different restaurants and the strip malls and stuff like that. They actually got to know their officer to the point where we actually had a restaurant owner up in Beaufort that was having the guy that was drunk and getting a little out of hand. And he called 911 and he said, I want my Officer Smith to respond because that's who I know. And it's like, well, Officer Smith is off right now. He won't be back in until tomorrow. And he was like, well, if I can't have Officer Smith, I'm just going to deal with it myself. Of course, they sent officers out there, but that shows you that they built relationships where they wanted a specific officer because now they felt like they had a connection with each other. And it completely changed the way they did community outreach with the law enforcement in Gwinnett County.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I'm assuming that's what, got the attention of other people with that community piece. Because to me, there's always, or at least when I was growing up, there's always been an invisible line between the community and police officers.
Yes.
It's always been. It's always been. And I mean, you don't see that same invisible line with EMT workers or firefighters. Why do you think that invisible line exists?
Well, in particularly is because typically, law enforcement sees people at the worst points in their life. And oftentimes we have to put handcuffs and take people to jail. Literally, or we also have the power to take a life if necessary. And that's a lot of power. And if misused, it can create confusion and it can create distrust in the community, especially if you have a lot of incidents where people feel like people are being arrested unfairly or without just cause, or if they feel like law enforcement has taken a life that didn't need to be, taken. And if you start getting the issues of excessive force, which unfortunately in minority communities, you tend to see law enforcement more heavily enforcing law, if you will, in minority communities. So that builds up that distrust. And so that is one of the reasons why I did what I did with my officers, because I wanted to start breaking down that wall. And if I could, I went to a community town hall meeting when I was a precinct commander, and I had one guy. He came to the meeting because he wanted to know what we were doing, in the community. He wanted to be aware, obviously. And he was like, "I don't like the police," and I know you guys. When I see y'all coming down the street, I tell my kids to come inside because I know y'all trying to kill them. I'm like, whoa,
Wow.
And that's,
But
so
did
I
he
asked
have
him, I
a
said,
point though? Did he have a point?
he had a point, but to that point, I asked him, I said, "Well, where are you from?" And he said, "Chicago."
Oh.
And I said, "Okay, let me ask you this. Why did you leave Chicago and come to Gwinnett County?" "Well, I heard Gwinnett County is good and it's a good place for, one of the best education systems in the state of Georgia. I wanted a better life for my family." "Okay, when was the last time you saw in the news where a cop just snatched the kid off the street and killed them in Gwinnett County?" "Well, I haven't never seen that." And I said, "So because of maybe something you saw in Chicago, you have now attributed that to every law enforcement officer. And now we have to bear the brunt of your being angry at, say, Chicago police for something that we've never done. And all I'm asking is that you give our officers a chance." And you know what? He said, "You're right." And he was one of the first people that actually stopped up at the precinct with his wife. And they actually brought us some wings and French fries on July 4th to say thank you.
Wow.
Because they,
Wow.
officers have to work the holidays and stuff. And so him and
You
his
know
wife
what?
brought in, some stuff to say, "Hey, thank you. We appreciate you at least making the effort. We see what you're doing."
I understand though. I definitely understand those in other communities who may feel that way because
Mm-hmm.
I used to feel the same exact way. It didn't matter if the cop was white or black, Hispanic
Right.
or Asian. I felt
Mm-hmm.
the same way. So I could definitely understand that, and I think the community piece, bridging the gap between police officers and the community, is also important. And speaking of bridging the gap. You were a former police chief for Gwinnett County, and you also worked in the jail. That's very unique, I think, at least from my standpoint. Maybe I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
How many police officers worked in the jail, and how many sheriffs worked as a police officer? Is that pretty typical, where you could see both sides of the same coin?
No, unfortunately, that's not very typical.
Okay.
And in some places where you go, before you can become a police officer, you have to work in the jail and work your way up, and through the system, so to speak, in order to be able to become a sworn officer to go out and actually enforce the law. I am unique in that the current detention center that we have, I was actually working for Gwinnett County while it was being built, and I got
Oh wow.
specialized training, in direct supervision to be able to handle the um, the detainees there at the jail. And so, again, what I find is that when you are a deputy in a housing unit and there's one deputy to 110 detainees, one of two
Wow.
things is going to happen. Either you are going to learn how to de-escalate a
Mm-hmm.
situation and learn how to talk to people and calm them down, or you're going to be the deputy that gets hurt and you're going to end up in a fight most of the time. And you can take those same skills, because the jail is just a microcosm in one location of the entire community. And if you can take those same skills of being able to learn how to talk to people, calm them down, and de-escalate a situation, the officer can then take those same skills out on the road when they're patrolling and interacting with the citizens in the community who are not being detained. And so I think that's a critical element that is often missed, because some people you have that they're hired as police officers and they never have to go to the jail. And
Wow. Wow.
one of the things that you had mentioned earlier is just, are there bad officers, bad deputy sheriffs? Absolutely.
Yeah.
In any professional field, you got bad doctors,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
got bad
Absolutely.
firemen.
Yeah.
No matter what you
Absolutely.
do, there's Yeah, no matter what you do, you're gonna find people who should not be in that profession. And the real cornerstone of leadership is being able to identify those people who should not be in that profession and get them out of there, so you can remain a professional organization and actually serve the people.
You know what? I appreciate you sharing that. With your perspective on being on both sides of the coin, in the jail and also outside, how has that shaped your perspective and just, dealing with people?
Well, I'll tell you, one thing I've learned is that people are people.
Right.
And also being in the military and traveling outside of this country, and I'm addressing this as far as how people see the U.S., but also understanding that no matter where we're from, even those who immigrate here, that no matter where we're from, we all want the same things. We want a better quality of life for ourselves and our children. We want a safer community.
Hmm.
We want some reassurances, that we will be able to support ourselves and not come to any harm. And that doesn't matter, whether you are, a Hispanic immigrant coming here, or if you're a German immigrant coming to this country, or even if you're right here, we all want the same things for ourselves and our families. And so I learned that people are people. And even those people who are detained in the jail, as much as we like to forget that some of those people in jail, some people have done some really bad things. Let's just put that out there. But at the same time, there are people who are in that jail who are there because they're waiting on their day in court, not to go there and die. They haven't been convicted yet. It's a pre-trial jail. Most of them have not been convicted yet. And so I say that to say that these are our sons, daughters, dads, mothers, cousins, uncles, brothers, sisters. These are our family members in the jail. And it goes back to the golden rule: treat people the way you would want them, to treat you. And so I think we have to start with that principle when we're dealing with people that are being detained in the jail. Most of them have not been convicted yet, but they are still people and worthy of respect.
Kurt, I see when I drive around Gwinnett County, I see a whole bunch of your signs around. And those signs says, vote for Curtis Clemons for sheriff. Um, how do you think that you have the audacity to run for sheriff? Really? Explain that.
Okay, that's a fair question. Well, when you see, let's see, how can I put this? And I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody,
Sure.
but the truth is the truth. And I'm sure anybody can relate. Let's say you're in a job and you see a supervisor that's over a division or a department, and you're constantly going, how did that person get that job?
Okay.
I could do a much better job. I know I can do a much better job. As a matter of fact, I have better relations with the people that they're supervising, and I could get them to do more and be more productive and do it in a better way where people feel respected, and things would flow much better. And so, quite honestly, I sat back, just being in the police department for many years, and seeing what was happening at the jails, what was happening within Gwinnett County, and having that law enforcement experience and background. I saw, with this current sheriff, I saw and I see what continues to happen at the jail. The number of deaths at the jail, we got more deaths at Gwinnett County Jail than they do in Fulton County, which is ridiculous. And we got the same medical and mental health professionals or companies that's working for Gwinnett County Jails, the same ones that's working for Fulton County Jail and Clayton County Jail. And all of them have the highest death rates in the metro area of detainees at their jails. Why do we still have these companies? We need to get rid of them. We need to revamp the whole system. And so I look at it and I go, I have the experience, I have the knowledge, and in fact, I have the trust of the people who are currently working there and those who have left. And I have people who have said, if you are elected, I will come back and work for Gwinnett. I just can't work under the current administration. And there's a reason for that. So when you factor in all those things, I think I would be a better sheriff, and I think I could get the job done and be more responsible and accessible to Gwinnett County citizens, because that's what they elect you for. They expect you to do your job. I think I would have the audacity to believe in myself and my capabilities that I could make that happen. I think I would be a much greater sheriff, and I'd be much more of a benefit to Gwinnett County as a whole.
How would you explain your leadership style?
Well, there is a time for everything. I refer back to the Bible sometimes. There's a time, for the leaves to fall. There's a time for everything. But a good leader needs to really understand, and it sounds very cliche-ish, but in my history, I found it to be true. The good leader needs to understand that he or she is not the smartest person in the room. And that's why you bring in good people up under you and around you who hopefully know more than you do. And then you give them the tools and the time to do their job and get out of their way. Let them know this is what we are trying to accomplish. You have the skill set. You have the knowledge. Let's come together. Let's make this happen. Give the people the freedom, the autonomy, and give them the tools to do their job and get out of the way. There's a time when I might have to come in as a supervisor and go, okay, brief me on what's going on. Where are we at this point in time of the project? Do we need to go left? Or do we need to go right? Or continue on with what we're doing? There's a time and a place for that. But have a plan in place. Let your team know what your goals are. And then you give them the ground rules on how you want it to happen. Let them go do their job.
What's your take on micromanagement?
I detest it. I absolutely detest micromanagement because, again, coming up, and I saw it in the military, because micromanagers are everywhere.
Yes,
I saw it in the military. I saw it at the sheriff's department. I've seen it at the police department. I've seen it at the DA's office where I work as well. Micromanagers tear at the core of the good worker and just makes them become less wanting or willing to do the work that needs to be done. And micromanagers actually are like a cancer to any organization. They spend more time worrying about what everybody else is doing. Go do what you need to do, and let the people do what they need to do. And for me, what I saw, like when I was a private first class, and I saw that corporal, and I was like, if I ever make corporal, I'm not going to be like him because I see how he does it. And if I make sergeant, once I make corporal, if I make sergeant, I'm not going to be like that sergeant because I see how he operates, and I'm not going to be like that. And the same thing happens at the police department and any other organization. And so you see those people, that have come before you, and you see what not to do. And micromanagement is definitely one of those things that you really don't need to do. If you believe in your people and you think you have quality people, you don't need to micromanage. They're going to do their job willingly and happily, and they're going to do a good job for the organization. And not only are they going to do a good job for the organization, they're going to make themselves look good, but they're also going to make their leader look good.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I just have a few more questions. A question just popped up in my head. You mentioned several times throughout our conversation who you are not going to be like. If I make this position, I'm not going to do this. If I make that position, I'm not going to do that. But is there one leader that stands out that you would or you do emulate down through your years of experience? Is there a leader that stands out, and why?
Absolutely. Even though my dad is Air Force and I'm Marines, there's a person, and I can remember back to my days, even as a young corporal with Gwinnett County Police Department, General Colin Powell. He has a saying, as a matter of fact, it's on that little plaque right there behind me on the wall. And it basically says that At any point in time that, your soldiers stop coming to you for advice, then you've lost them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
If they don't feel like they can come to you, you've lost them. They don't feel supported. They don't feel like you really care about them. But and that's one of the things that I have done throughout my career, no matter where I've worked. And it sounds cliche-ish, but I believe it is necessary. I've had what's called an open door policy, a real open door policy. And no matter what rank, you didn't have to make an appointment and all this other stuff. I mean, obviously, I'm in a meeting. You have to catch me the next time. But you didn't have to make an appointment. But if you needed somebody to talk to, you had an issue that you felt like you couldn't address by yourself, my door was always open, regardless of what rank I was at. To the point that when I became chief, I didn't see myself as chief. I still saw myself as Curtis. And so and you can understand this being in the military, when the ranking officer says, hey, Kashawn, come see me in my office. It's kind of like the principal at the high school, like, oh, what have I done? But,
right.
A lot of times, I'm not thinking I'm the chief telling this sergeant to come to my office. I'm thinking I'm just Curtis calling this sergeant to come to my office. But, they'll show up and they're like, yes, sir. Did I do something wrong? No, come on in. I just wanted to talk to you about this program. I think you would be good for this program and wanted to see if you'd be interested. And they're like, whoo, that sigh of relief, because I wasn't seeing myself as chief because, if you've been in the military and you raised and, this person puts on his pants, one pants leg at a time, just like I do. And so that's the way I kind of look at it. And it's not about, I've never been about rank. It's about what can I do to make myself, my people, and the organization better. And so rank, to me, should not play a part in that at all.
Thank you for sharing that. I have so many more questions, but time has definitely, slipped away. We've been chatting for the last 30 minutes. If you can leave us with one message, obviously that you are running for Sheriff of Gwinnett County, but there's more to you than that. You're a community man. You're a lover of community. Treat people as the way they want to be treated. Also, yes, you are in jail and you did something to be in jail, but you're still a human being. Is that correct?
Correct. Exactly.
As a voter, which I am your constituent, and there are going to be others that also watch this and listen to this. Leave us with one message. No one is they may not listen to the entire 33 minutes, but if you could just give us 30 seconds of why we should ever dare to use our precious vote and vote for Curtis Clemons.
Excellent question. I will say this. My campaign slogan has been experience matters. I have been in the military, which was the foundation of leadership. I've been a deputy sheriff here in Gwinnett County. I've become a Gwinnett County police officer, rising to the level of chief. That means that I have to have some level of leadership capabilities instilled within me to be able to lead an organization of almost 1,200 officers and civilians as well. Worked in the district attorney's office as the first person of color to be the deputy chief of investigations. And now I'm asking you, the voter, to become the person that goes in that booth and vote for Curtis Clemons for your next sheriff. Experience matters. I have the experience. I have the knowledge. But more importantly, I have the community at heart. During my first runoff election in 2020, when I ran for sheriff the first time and I lost by less than 1%, my slogan then was community first. I live here. I raise my kids here. And just like you, Gwinnett County is my home. And so I want it to be run with the Gwinnett standard of excellence that it has been. And I believe I am the right candidate to continue that Gwinnett standard of excellence. And I ask people for their vote.
Thank you so much, Curtis. Where could our viewers and listeners connect with you?
They can always find me on Instagram at Clemons for Sheriff. Same thing for TikTok, elect Clemons for Sheriff on Facebook. And also, if they want to go check out my website, they can go to clemensforsheriff.info.
Sounds good. Hey, Champion Nation. This has been a great conversation. Community connection with the sheriff. Hey, Curtis Clemons, thank you so much for joining us. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right.